Join us on this multi-dimensional journey as we uncover the timeless connection between medicine, magic, spirituality, and the mysteries of the universe. I'm Olive.
And I'm Raven.
And
this is the Double Rainbow Podcast.
Welcome back to the Double Rainbow Podcast.
I'm Raven.
And I'm Olive. And today we're dropping in to talk about the amazing star family, the Pleiades, which is the Greek name, but it's more commonly known as the Seven Sisters constellation. We'll delve into the similarities of ancient stories, as well as hot topics such as Pleiadian starseeds and portals.
So the Pleiades, also known, like you said, as the Seven Sisters or Messier 45, is an open star constellation containing middle-aged hot B-type stars in the northwest of the constellation Taurus. The cluster is dominated by hot blue and luminous stars that have formed within the last 100 million years.
So currently, most people see 6 stars when they look into the night sky at this constellation, but others with really good eyesight, not me, they claim to see 14. So based on current astronomy, and this is just a theory, by the way, but the seventh sister, so you're like, why is it called the Seven Sisters if most people only see 6? The seventh sister, or that seventh star, was actually... the star still exists, but now it's kind of hidden behind another one, and that this star was actually more visible around 100,000 years ago, which is very interesting because so many cultures across the world call this constellation the Seven Sisters, indicating that some of these stories potentially 100,000 years old.
Wow.
So pretty crazy, right? That's pretty amazing. So I'm going to go through a couple stories as examples and to point out some of the similarities and some of the differences as well. So one thing that you'll notice is that there is... like Orion is a protagonist in some of these stories. Orion is generally a male energy, and that's a nearby constellation if you aren't familiar. And then there will also be supplementary stories, which I haven't added here today, but you can find them very easily, about the loss of the seventh sister. And that ranges anywhere from like there being a cataclysmic event to, she's just hiding. So there's a lot of those stories, but we're going to just talk about a few of the seven sisters stories. So, there's an abundance of information on the Greek origins, and you can look that up very easy. I thought it would be a little bit more interesting to bring in some of the stories from indigenous tribes across the world that have an older culture. The stories are likely, older themselves. So the first one we're going to talk about is the Bhanraji Tribe, or the Raji Tribe, and this is an ethnic minority in northern India / Nepal. They're unfortunately very oppressed and persecuted, and their ways of life are threatened. So I had never heard of these people until I was researching the Pleiades, but they are keepers of some amazing wisdom. And to the Bhanraji, they refer to the Pleiades as the Seven Sisters-in-law and one brother-in-law. But I couldn't find information if the one brother-in-law was actually Orion, or if that is another star that they used to be able to see in the past or can still see today. And so for the Bhanraji tribe, the Pleiades, where they're located, so when it rises up over the mountains at night, that to them is a sign from their ancient kinfolk. So their story of the Pleiades and of the Seven Sisters is one of a creation story and about the origins of their people, and that is their family. So that is, all the way in northern India and Nepal. Now let's scoot over to Turtle Island, hop on over to Turtle Island. So the Lakota Tradition. So Lakota is actually a big name for a few different tribes. So it's kind of like there's like sub-tribes as part of the Lakota. So there's different stories here. I'm just going to talk about one as an example. But in general, across the Lakota people, the Lakota indigenous people, the Pleiadian constellation is actually the head of the white buffalo, the white buffalo constellation. And they also, many of their stories include this part of the constellation, the head of the white buffalo, as part of their creation story, how they came to be as people, where they're from. And also, I won't go all the way into it, but the story of the white buffalo calf woman who basically taught the Lakota people how to make sacred their way of life when that had been lost, is also thought to be from the Pleiades. You can find more on that. So a story that I will put the link to is by Lakota elder Dwayne Hollow Hornbear. And in his story that's been passed down to him, it is about so there's a little boy who's born from a woman who's from the stars. So he's born on the earth, he's born in the Lakota tribe. And this man becomes so respected and lovely in the community. You know, he's a star boy. Better than your average person, I guess. Anyways, a huge red bird comes down from the mountains and starts terrorizing the people and kills 7 girls from the tribe. And so the star boy seeks, the bird out, kills the bird, and then makes the 7 spirits of the little girls who lost their life, makes them the 7 sisters. And that's the origin and in that specific story. But there's many variations. And then also something that was interesting is I've linked a video as well by a man named Hanamani, also, and that means walks among, but goes also by the English name of Dr. A.C. Ross. And he's a Lakota man, elder man, who was contacted when he was younger and not in a very spiritual phase of his life by a serpent spirit of the Pleiades. And then later at Sundance, where if you've heard of that, it's a very intense ceremony practiced by different indigenous tribes of the plains on Turtle Island. He was contacted by 3 more Pleiadian spirits. So, highlighting the connection between the Lakota and the origins from the Pleiades. And so it's interesting. That's just a little side note, but I want everybody to watch that because it's super, super important and interesting. Okay, so now we've looked at Nepal. We've looked, Nepal, Northern India. We've gone all the way to Turtle Island. Now, let's look all the way at Australia. Very far away. And what's interesting is the indigenous people of Australia have some of the oldest living cultures that has a lot has been lost, unfortunately, to genocide, but they have some of the longest uninterrupted cultural development because of the physical and geographical isolation. So I'll also link a video here, and this is by Susie Betts and Veda Betts, Wirangu elder. So that's a tribe in Australia. And they share their story, their version of the story, the 7 sisters story, which they call Yugarelia. And so in that story, the 7 sisters are already the stars. And then they're being chased by Orion. And this is actually common in other Lakota stories as well as I'm pretty sure Hopi, some of their stories. There's a similar thing going on where Orion falls in love with the sisters and chases them, and then becomes like a serpent and chases them down into the earth. And during this goose chase of these of these beautiful women, tears the earth up. And that's actually how the hills in the earth, or the manda, as the Wirangu call them, is created. So it's actually part of not just a creation story in terms of their spirits or souls as people. They're talking about creation of the earth and the geographical phenomenon that we have. And watch this video. It's so good because they also link all these other stories that are very similar about the 7 sisters and Orion. So as you see, it's just interesting how all of these cultures, especially indigenous cultures that are very old, how they share these common elements. And there's many others. So also the Tuareg, or sorry. I'm sorry if I mispronounce these things. I just read a lot, and so I don't know if I'm saying everything right, but the Tuareg Berber people of Northern Africa also have a similar story, and they call the Seven Sisters, though, Daughters of the Night. Another very common version that you will hear is actually that they are like the seven chicks or the seven chickens, and this is in Norse. This is in Norse tradition. They're actually Freya's chicks. And then also in some ancient Thai cultures, they're called the chick stars, which you could argue, that in itself is feminine. Like it's not the roosters. So, I mean, it's interesting. Like there's a reason that these are being called sisters. There's a reason they're being called chicks, or like, they're chicks, they're feminine. And because if it was all just random, then there'd be a 50-50 chance between cultures. Is it going to be a boy? Is it going to be a girl energy, masculine, feminine energy? But that's not how things actually play out when you look at a lot of different stories. Of course, there's a few places that have stories of the stars being, masculine energy, but, masculine, feminine, it's not always about gender. It's more about energy. So I highly encourage you to read some more of these. This is only to get you interested and to get you thinking about the connections and the common threads of these ancient stories that connect not only our origins as humans, to the stars, but also connect the origins of our Earth and the creation of like why our Earth looks the way that it does. So thank you for listening to my stories.
I love that. And I am going to go the full 180. We are going to talk about like some channeled stuff about Pleiadians and Starseeds, because that's kind of a hot topic right now. But what I really want to talk about,
super hot.
Yeah, super, super hot. Is I don't know,
middle-aged hot bee hot.
Yeah, hella hot. To the point where like, and I put this on there because it is all in fun. You can like do a quiz online, and this is on multiple websites of like, are you a Pleiadian starseed? What are you a starseed? Are you an Arcturian? Are you?
You can find one on BuzzFeed, honestly.
Yeah. Hey man, BuzzFeed's tapped in sometimes, though. I'm telling you,
it's all about the person who makes it. They're just an organization, but it's funny.
Yeah. So the first thing that I want to talk about, though, and I know that this is really could be considered privileged information, only because you can only access initiation, is what it's called, by Matthias De Stefano on Gaia channel, which of course you have to pay for. But hey, you can do a 7-day trial. I totally recommend it because they have
keep making new email accounts.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, it's definitely worth like just trying out for 7 days. So Matthias De Stefano is really interesting because he is not channeling this information. He is remembering the information. So he is basically, when he was a child, he was remembering everything all at once, but it wasn't really making sense because he was a child. And as he grew up and got older, he started to piece together the memories. And now this show Initiation, which is really just him speaking and then putting visuals to it, is him, the coagulation of everything that he's remembered and put together, and is giving us just his perspective. And he's pretty clear about that. Hey, it's just my perspective. So I think it's fascinating. He talks about Pleiadians as a like race, or as people that we call them. And then he talks about the actual constellation. So what's really important is that this constellation is one of a few in our galaxy that basically is where time and space meet, and acts as a portal for higher dimensional beings to not come through technically, but contact. So they can push information through this portal type of thing. And what's really important is when he's talking about Pleiadians as like a race, they really are just light bodies. They are not like us. They have similar stuff, like they're bipeds, but they are light beings, and so they look like angels, right? Like we mistake them as angels in the Bible and things like that. But they care only about really the spiritual aspect. And where this comes into play is they are, in history, they're guarded, the Taurus constellation, which is them, the bull, are guarded by what's called boots, which is where, in the knee of boots is where Arcturians are supposedly come from. So the Arcturians are like the scientists, the chemists, the medical aspects, the physical aspects. And then the Pleiadians are the more spiritual aspects. So they're trying to bring heaven onto earth, versus Arcturians are trying to bring, make earth into heaven.
Right.
So what happens is the Pleiadians send the information to the Arcturians, and the Arcturians are the ones that program it through our DNA, our blood, that like scientific aspect. So really, when you get any channeled information, or if you vibe with this information about Pleiadians, they only give information about how to connect to your spiritual self and how to connect through your heart chakra, and your inner self. So there's very specific ways to tell that it's Pleiadian. But anyway, I could go on about this. So supposedly they are between fourth and fifth dimension or density. That is like their home vibration. But they come through the portal in Merkabas, which is their light vehicle. So they don't travel in spaceships. They're not in spaceships in the earth on another dimension.
They don't need spaceships if they don't have bodies.
Yeah, man. Because they're not physical in their vibration. They're very much spiritual. So they travel through with their mind, and they can travel basically to a location like XY, which would be time and space. So I think that's really fascinating. They are what you would consider the ascended masters. And where this links up, it also links with the Elohim, which gets kind of confusing because some people think it's archangels, but they are kind of their own thing. And there are 12 Elohim, which matches up with what he says is the 12 stars of the Pleiades. So he says there are 12 stars, and they are connected to the vibrations of the Elohim, which if you want, you can consider them archangels, which really all they're doing is they are connected to every aspect of creation. And therefore it acts as a portal into the lower densities, only the lower. And I think that's fascinating.
That's a trip.
Yeah.
That is
the way that they would show up, because they are light beings, and they are in a Merkaba, which would be the Merkaba shape, the tetrahedron.
Yeah.
They would appear, because they're spinning really fast, as a sphere of light. So when you see orbs and things like that,
I see those every day.
I know, we just saw one. They visited. No, but I think it's like, when you have that, like a full vision in this sphere of light, which I have got to tell you guys a story about that, because I did do an angel working that was 10 days long, and I was calling upon archangels, and a gigantic sphere of freaking light appeared in front of my eyes, and I started crying out of fear.
Aww.
I was like, oh my God. Yeah. And then what's also fascinating is they don't have their own races. So everyone just thinks like Pleiadians are like these extraterrestrials, and they are in a sense, but they're
like a dog breed.
Yeah, like that's not who they are. And he says that, the only difference you can tell from like a Pleiadian to another Pleiadian is not their skin, like how we think of races. It is their soul vibration would come as a color. So some would be more blue, more yellow.
Does he? So I haven't read this. This is Raven's cup of tea. She knows way more about this than I do. But my question is, does he say anything like about, okay, we're multidimensional beings. Let's say we're just assuming that's true. I think a lot of us that are listening to the show probably feel this way. Is it possible in his experience like that part of our multi-dimensional existence is like we're simultaneously existing, as Pleiadians, and that's why he remembers stuff, and it's not necessarily this like chronological, like linear, like, oh, back in time I used to be a Pleiadian, and to this, and now I'm not, but I'm going to share my experience? Or is it a little more fun than that, like a little more mixed up?
It's wild. Like he says he remembers one life where he was living in the past, because people kind of, it's a little contradictory, but the past is where the origins are. So they are a little bit more, not evolved, but they're usually more connected. They're not an outcrop, they're the branch, or they're the limb and not the branch. You know what I'm saying? Where he worked in the past, or lived in the past and worked in the future. And he said basically like that it was all happening at the same time, but obviously for us to experience this third
We just can't even.
we literally are not built for it, like because of where we
No.
are in the location. It's bounded by time and space.
We have like kidneys and shit. Like it's
yeah,
you know.
yeah. And he does, I really like him because he says like all of this stuff, this ascension, this enlightenment, it can only be done through your imagination and the mind, because you have to go into your heart center to actually even connect to those possibilities. You cannot do it like in your physical body. And he's very good about that. Like, this is realistic. You cannot just do that in your body, but you can return to those locations in your heart center and in your mind.
I love that. I love that so much because so I actually do like divination like classes and one-on-one work with people, teaching them tarot and stuff like that. And that's a big thing that always comes up is people, they say, you know, when they're learning the practice, how do I know I'm not imagining this? And I'm like, well, part of the learning process is honestly like becoming used to that question and becoming used to that fact, and also like examining like you're imagining things for a reason. So like your imagination sometimes can be like the gateway drug to like actual intuition. And don't just shut things down immediately because you think you're imagining it. Because like what do you think imagination is? If you're saying it's just something from the mind, sometimes the mind is the interface for a lot of things. So we don't want to just shut down our imagination. So that's really cool. I like that that's the focus.
Yeah, and he's really good about like the mind is what we in 3D, like the mind is what we have as our resource. And when he's saying mind, he's not talking about like our intellect. He's talking about our
Like our consciousness.
yeah, he's talking about our
Yeah.
connection. We always have that connection. It's just veiled and it's hard to get to, but if you enter into that process of
We
going
beat it out of each other. I mean, it's not when we're born. I mean, you ever connect with a baby, they're like freaking enlightened master, and then you just get it beat out of you by the world.
seriously, no, there's like a poem that stuck with me. The guy was like, toddlers speak half gibberish, half God. And I'm like, it's so true. Like
It's true.
yeah. But another thing that was fascinating was he linked it over, he explained sort of it going through history, right? Like what they did, that why they're incorporated into history, and made sure to let you know that like the Arcturians, the ones that were the chemists, the medicine people, they are the ones that visited in their bodies. They are the ones that cloaked themselves in bodies. Like they're the ones from Egypt. That was not the Pleiades. The Pleiades, when you think about them, really the only thing that you can kind of connect with is they represent, especially in Greek philosophy and Greek culture, music, art, painting, spirituality, religion, like that faith. So they're very like untouchable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's how Ahanamani actually, the Lakota elder actually describes meeting the Pleiadian energies is like they're light beings. Like they had form, but it's like light being form. It's not the same as a tangible physical body. But instead of just like bipedal beings, they presented themselves as I believe one was a serpent and then some other animals. So I think that, you know, I don't know, they might have flexibility in their,
oh, I would assume so.
presentation and form and
Yeah. Well, and remember, it goes through like the person's filters. You know what I mean? So if you have a filter on there,
a cultural context.
Yeah, exactly. Or like it's easier for you to talk to an animal than it is this freaking sphere of light, you know?
I think it is.
Yeah, I think I have some of those filters on there too, but
yeah.
So I thought that was fascinating. You guys really, I think it's worth watching. And he does do a few on the Pleiadians. I just kind of did the main things. It was interesting because he was talking about how they don't have a connection to the root chakra, which again goes to them not being physical, right? Them not being grounded. And it's because they connect through their heart center instead of their root chakra. So these are all just
Love it.
super fascinating. And then I kind of wanted to go into the traditional version of Pleiadian. And you guys will see this a lot. I'm sure everyone's read a few of these, but Bringers of the Dawn is one of the like most popular OG Pleiadian channeled books. It's a full-on book. You can get it for free actually as a PDF. And I just want to like read you guys something because it sounds like there's a good message in it, but again, in our last talk about spiritual discernment, it already evokes some red flags of like
Bring it on. Let me hear it. I have one.
So it says, and you guys, I feel like even on TikTok, you will hear this word for word. So it says, "This is big news. You have come to Earth at a place in time when evolution is at hand. A major leap is about to take place that you came to participate in, and you are not alone. Many energies are coming to Earth to participate in this great project. There are motherships surrounding the planet that are acting as literal transducers of energy. They are beams of light coming to Earth from old and ancient star systems that have been working with you for eons." And it continues to go on about how
we're special.
Yeah, well, it also talks about control, which I think is interesting because like they're talking about reptilians and all that stuff, and for me it's like, are spiritual beings like talking about conspiracy theories? Like, is this the heart of what we should be talking about? Because
how useful is this?
Right, exactly. How useful is the information? Besides, it makes me feel fearful. And when it makes me feel fearful, I'm kind of like, not to say it's not true, but the way it was delivered to me didn't align. But it's
What about the reptilians? What did they say?
Yeah, so they're saying, okay, they are saying that worshiping a new god is coming, and that is what is a frequency controlling the earth, and that we need
that's red flaggy for sure.
Yeah, right. The creator gods, that one is one for me too, because but again, it's going through the filter of the channel, which is fine.
Right.
So if they think of gods as logos or whatever,
and maybe worship is like meaning like revere. I don't know, but that's a hard one to make like justify, honestly, because like worship is a very specific word to use.
And if you have like a religious like trauma, which I feel like a lot of us do, or at least I do.
Oh yeah.
It will trigger you, and then all of a sudden you're like, what? It just almost devalues, and the whole experience you had with the religion is like putting it on you, but in another way.
And that's so directly like coming up against a lot of other channeled content and like information about how like whatever you want to call it, ascension or evolution or enlightenment, whatever you want to call that topic, is about no hierarchies and is about not worshiping, but like just being love, and so to reinforce the hierarchical energy structure as like the ultimate thing, that's a little questionable.
I think so. I mean, but unfortunately, it's kind of all we have. Like, that's why I really like the Matthias De Stefano, because it's very refreshing, and it's definitely not anything you've heard before, but it is, but in a way more simple way. You know what I mean? Just like, this is energy. This is how energy works. But so let's go into Starseeds, because this is more of a hard topic than this channeled information. So let's talk about what Starseeds actually are, because Starseeds are called many things, and they are different from indigo children or star children. So Starseeds are considered wanderers. They are essentially ascended masters in disguise. So that's important to note here. They are people that are usually 4th, 5th, or 6th density, which would be Pleiadians. They fall between 4th and 5th density. So they are from those vibrations, and they have chosen to take on a mission to go to planets, not just Earth, multiple planets, all of these things that are close to the end of their cycle, their 75,000 year cycle, or at least that's what ours is. They come to the end of it to help basically a more people evolve. And they do that by holding a specific light frequency throughout the planet. And they do this just by being themselves, by recognizing who they are. So you'll notice that a huge character trait or whatever they say of starseeds is that you resonate with this fact. Like you resonate with the idea that you are not from here. I know.
That is awesome, but there's also, I think this is a really complex topic. I'm not like against this necessarily, or I'm not like this is all shit. I think there's really great things here, but I think that alone is like a little because what do you mean by resonate? Because it's like if it makes you feel good, like maybe it's just because like you were just told you're elite. You know what I mean? And so of course you're gonna resonate to some extent. And I'm not trying to like shit on people who think, you know, who really believe that this is what they are. I'm not acting like I know everything. I'm just putting that out there as to consider, like when that gets pushed as like something as it's like, okay, well, you know, if you resonate with this, then that's who you are. Because it's like, okay, well, maybe if you were showed a different type of star seed before you heard about the Pleiadian star seeds and you resonated with that one, just because that was the first one you were exposed to, like, I'm just saying there's a lot of nuance here. There's a lot of things to think about. And I'm not saying that to discourage people. I'm saying it to open people up to like look at all of the different options and don't you don't necessarily have to immediately put yourself in a box.
I totally agree with you. And honestly, Pleiadians are like, I would say the number one starseed, like the number one talked about type of starseeds, when there are so many. There's Syrians, Lyrians, there's Arcturians, there's like so many. Yeah. And I think people resonate with the Pleiadians the most because, like I said, they're considered to be so spiritual and are like not physical. So if you are,
and like look back at the creation stories we just talked about, like there's so many creation stories all over the world that were from the Pleiades. So like what if we're all Pleiadian star seeds?
well,
Like,
and that's
you
something
know,
that we could talk about at another time, because I think people don't understand that. In my opinion, this is my opinion, we are all like, how many of us are there? Like 10 billion, right? Something like that. We are all
almost,
part
not
of,
quite.
not only are we part of probably one soul, one memory complex, we are just fragments of that, trying to get to know itself. When it comes down to it, we are all one. Like we are literally all one.
Yeah.
So there is no
I
difference.
vibe with that.
Yeah, there's no difference in all of this. We are an outcrop of the primordial Om, the first, you know, thought, and we are only feeling individual because we are in this third density, and because so I think that people really, if you feel like, oh, I'm a star seed, I'm one of the only, you know, people or whatever, you need to have a hard look on yourself and be like, well, star seeds know, if they exist, right? If they do exist, they would know that they are part of one. They would know that everything is one.
Right.
And if you're not resonating with the fact that you are all one, I don't understand how you could resonate as a starseed.
As being a Pleiadian.
And it's because being a Pleiadian, who is literally, that's their goal, is to teach everyone that we are all one. So
yeah.
But
it's just something to think about.
Yeah, exactly. And there is, I am an astrologist, so obviously me and Olivia are opposite sides of the coin here. But I'm an astrologist, and there are quite a few ways to tell some of your origins. And a typical one would be if your Uranus and Neptune, Uranus, I always say Uranus, it's Uranus, but I can't help it. If they are conjunct within 10 degrees, you would be considered a starseed. However, the only time that Neptune and Uranus were conjunct was really within a, like, I think 10-15 year period, which is when luckily me and Olivia were born. It just so happens that the people who are like making the decisions right now are the ones that were born during this time. But there are some other ways. So you can look into your chart and you can see that. But I think the number one way to do this would be to get a past life regression, because there have been a lot of people that get past life regressed, hypnotized, and are describing their life as a, or they're describing their life as a Lyran, or they're in Atlantis and they know that they came down from this particular star system. So I think that would be more of a way than just resonating with it or taking a quiz online. But it's all fun. You
trying to have your own memories. Yeah. Like
try to remember it. Yeah.
Trying to remember.
Try to connect to it. And you know what? We could even give you guys a prompt as well of
let's do that.
Yeah, a meditation that you can do.
That'd be great.
Ask. I think people don't realize this, but you can ask, I want a specific memory of me in another star system. I don't want to remember my life on Earth. I want to remember it somewhere else. And then see where
all you got to do is ask.
And remember Olivia's advice about your imagination versus your intuition, because you have to go through the imagination to connect with that intuition. It's just one of those kind of gateway starting points. So get comfortable with that. Like she said, yeah, that's amazing.
Well, thank you, Raven, for sharing all that. That was awesome. I learned so much. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap things up?
I do feel like, though, we need to have another one. Maybe.
Oh, for sure. We're doing this again. Yeah, because we just cracked things open.
Yeah, exactly.
We just cracked things open. We don't have a choice now. We are actually being held hostage by the Pleiadians. They're making us do this. Help. So we'll get back with y'all. And just to bring it all together, I think the Pleiadian family, the star family, is just a reminder that everything is related. We are all related. And the beautiful stories that we shared earlier, the information that Raven was coming through with, are reminders of that. And also the beautiful stories that I was very privileged to put you guys on to have been kept alive by indigenous cultures who have been heavily persecuted for their way of life. And so with that, all I have to say, land back. If you don't know what that is, please look it up. Land back, motherfuckers. If you want to support this podcast, please show some love on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. You can subscribe, hit the like button,
smash that.
Give us a little smash that. Give us a little comment.
Yep. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm Raven. And this is Olivia.
And I'm Olive.
Yeah, is it Olive or Olivia? We should clear this up while we're on the podcast.
I go back and forth. I have two names. It's fine.
You're dual natured. I like it. I'll ask beforehand.
I go by both.
I'm Olive.
And I'm Raven.
And this is the Double Rainbow Podcast.